Well, hello. It is Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. here in the UK. And one of my guests today, I think it's about 10 a.m. in New York when Misha is. So we're going for another international flavor today. And I'm delighted to be joined by Misha Rubin, who's going to be talking to us today all about the meaningful work and finding meaningful and satisfying work. And for those of you that know me, this is absolutely just up my street because it's something I feel very passionate about. It's the reason I left my corporate career 20 years ago. And it's something so when I saw that Misha was an expert in this area, it was just like a no-brainer, need to get him on. And that's what we've done. So just to get moving then, just to start us off, obviously it takes a few minutes for people to see the live. So what we'll do is just play the intro as always, and then we'll really get into it and meet Misha. So there you go. And here we are. Yes, I'm Phil Crowshaw and welcome to another edition of Friday Live. And the clue is in the title, in that we are actually live. And not only are we live, but we're live with New York. In fact, I should do a bit of an American accent there, shouldn't I? We're live with New York. Yeah, okay. I'm never going to get on anywhere, am I? I've been delighted today, though, to be joined by Misha Rubin, who's going to be talking to us about his insights and his research about meaningful and satisfying work. It's something that's very, very close to my heart, and I've been really looking forward to this interview. So, Misha, a very warm welcome to Friday Live from good old New York, the Big Apple.
Hello, Phil. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Okay, so you know what? Let's start off at the beginning, which is where I always start. Obviously, it's a good place to start, as the song goes. And tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what your passion is, and what you tend to spend most of your time doing with your life these days.
So, well, there are many, I could say many things, but I'm a career educator. I'm a speaker. I am an entrepreneur. I am a parent. I'm an adoption advocate. I'm an artist. So there's a lot of things happening, right? But the main thing that I do in life for my work is I developed a methodology of how to guide different types of people to make their career choices, whether we're talking about mid-career professionals or students or leaders looking for what's next, or CEOs looking to leave legacy after, with their organization, or somebody that wants to transform their organization and career, relationship to career in general. So these are all the things I do, or people that want to retire and without retiring and looking for what's next to them once they complete certain part of their life. That's what I do.
Just absolutely love it. Really do love it. As I say, it's something very close to my heart on a personal level as well. Can I just ask you, you've obviously do a lot of things in your life. Do you get bored easy?
Not really. I boredom is not a conversation in my life that
Right.
that
Right. Okay.
exists.
So you fill it. You fill it. You fill it straight away. So there's no chance to
It's
get
like
bored.
it boring is never something that a concern in my life. Like I have a people mowing grass, on my lawn right now. That's already not boring during my podcast, and I thought, oh my god, how are we going to do this, Phil?
The funny thing is, Mish, you might be in America, I might be in the UK, but I have people mowing my lawn or the lawns near me as well when I'm trying to do live streaming as well. So it's what you might call a Western world, first world problem, I guess.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
of course what's amazing about live is it's truly live, and if anything could happen, which is the jeopardy that I suppose in a way that makes it more exciting. So yeah, we don't need to worry about that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, there'll be nobody drilling is another one I get often just at the peak moment of interviews. That's another one. Okay, so I guess obviously we've all been through. We're still kind of going through, I guess, to a point this awful thing called the global pandemic, which is again the clue in the title. It's something that we're going through here and you're going through there, and as about anybody in the world who I interview right now are going through the same thing at different phases, etc. So just let me ask you, in terms of people's need or drive for finding more meaningful and more fitting work to them, has the pandemic had any kind of impact on that in America? And for the reason I ask is because in the UK, there's been a huge amount of people that have suddenly stopped and reflected a lot because they've had the chance to.
Yeah.
And when they've sat and reflected without all the chaos that's going on around them, they've stopped and thought, you know what? I hate my job and I don't want to go back to doing what I was doing before. Or I've always wanted to start a business and they've not really had the chance to do it, or they've not had the will to do it. Is that the same in America, or Americans always driven like that?
Well, I think there's definitely a lot of conversation that people reflecting more. I definitely hear that a lot from people. I want to highlight for the listeners is that I think with pandemic and what pandemic created, that we live in truly extraordinary times in terms of career, and something that never happened before, and no other generation had what we have. And I will give you the four arguments for that. But fundamentally, if not now, when would be better time, right? So, and let me give you four arguments. Number one, the geographic boundaries, almost disappeared, maybe not fully, which allows people to work and have access to employment in many more places than ever before. Nobody had that. The societies are transforming, and when society is transforming, the economy and businesses are transforming with them. There are definitely some pains involved with that, but there's a lot of opportunity. So we're really truly living at a time of opportunity. I don't know about the UK, but I would imagine it would apply there in the same way that barriers to start your own business are very small. I have no idea what people did 30 years ago, but when I came up with the Career Leap idea, I created a web page, I posted on Facebook and LinkedIn, and got my first 3 students, right? So who had that? And number 4, unprecedented access to learning, so you can go there are a lot of free resources, paid resources. You can get MBAs, you can get certifications from very privileged colleges nowadays. So the access, and you can do all of this sitting in your couch. So if I look at these 4 things, which is disappearing geographic locations, the business transformation, the very little barriers to start business, and access to education, I would say nobody ever had that. So if I would also ask people, like, what are you waiting for? When do you think it will going to get better than now? But a lot of people fundamentally stopped in their career choices is really because we're not educated on the topic of how to identify right careers. Even the people that are making some choices now, how do they know that they're making the right choices for themselves? right? So I definitely think that in our society there is a big missing is the component of career education, and that's, I think, if people understood what is the criteria for them to explore different careers or different jobs or different organizations and industries, as well as if they had tools to come up with all these ideas of where and what they could be doing, I think many more people would be moving into that direction.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And is it fair to say then that people tend to just go off a gut feel as opposed to doing anything more formal in research terms, or even something more scientific in terms of things like psychometric testing and things like that that can identify where your strengths may be and where your weaknesses are? Or they'll tend to just go with a gut feel based on what they think they want to do without any real, I suppose, formal approach to it, I suppose.
Well, I think the two most common way people seek employment, um, and I call them traps, right? The one is, I call it skill and experience trap. So you update your resume with your latest skills and experiences, and then you look for job, and then you probably, that's how you found your current job, right? That you're not happy about. And then you probably also know a lot of people that have great skills and experiences and can't stand their jobs. So while skills and experience has certain level of importance, they just not a good starting point for a proper career change, you know. And the second trap, I call it an opportunity trap. This is when you get a phone call from a recruiter or from your ex-boss, or you just see something someplace and it looks like it's better, that you'll be paid more money or you'll have more experiences or you'll do, there's something more of something that you would want, right? And if you make a few of those jumps, opportunity jumps, you might end up in the place that you will be like, how did I even end up here? I never wanted to be here. So these types, pursuing these opportunities, if they're not curated properly, they can take you on the paths that you don't want to take and end up in the places where you don't want to be. So in my methodology, what I work with my students is the concept of unique career criteria. So that's when people could really, and I usually say knowing what to do in life is a function of knowing who you are. And I like to repeat it twice because I just think it's so important. So knowing what to do in life is a function of knowing who you are. And then knowing who you are, really, how do you, a lot of people, when I work with mid-career professionals, they usually have a lot of data points about who they are, but they not articulated, and they don't know how to use them as a criteria. So if you could imagine, if you worked in an organization and solving the problem that's aligned with your values, if you were doing work that's built on your strengths, if the job setup, including your compensation and how you operate, fits your motivation mechanism, and the way you interact with your team or with other people or with customers, that's aligned with your interpersonal profile. So if you imagine that all these criteria met, then you would be in what I call your thrive zone. You would be thriving. You would naturally have enthusiasm. You would naturally be committed to results. You'd naturally be growing, and you would have access to your peak performance, right? So all these things would come out naturally. So the first part of my methodology I call discovery. So this is about articulating who you are and choosing where you go, and it starts with defining your unique career criteria.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Do you think that, and I've talked about this before on this show, I don't know what it's like in the US, but I sometimes get concerned at school in the UK about what I call sheep dip education. In the earlier days where, and I've never really understood this, and even from my own kids, where why don't they don't seem to concentrate on identifying the strengths in the kids and then really homing in on the strengths. It seems to be that they will do everything they can to build up weaknesses instead of focusing on strengths. that's something that I certainly perceive here, because it is a perception. Is that something you think happens in the US, or is it not really a thing?
Listen, there are so many problems with education. I don't even know where to start. I think it's a whole different podcast episode if I go into that direction, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, absolutely, self-awareness is obviously a massive thing, and I noticed you actually used the term on your website, which is again resonated with me. Um, what can people do then to build that self-awareness? Because I have conversations with my coaching and consulting clients all the time, and I'll just ask them, look them in the eye, and I'll ask them straight away, name me your strengths. And I'd say a good 70% really struggle to even answer the question.
Hmm. Yeah, so I think there is a important reflection that people need to make. To me, there's a conversation about, I use phrase career values. And the whole conversation of values in our society always feels so like philosophical and theoretical. Where in reality, if you clear about your values, and then the other thing for humans, and that actually goes back to the point that you were making, Phil, is if you don't have language for things, they really very theoretical and you can't really use them in life. So when I work with my students on identifying their career values, they never like shocked with what they find, because someplace deep inside they have an idea of what the values, and usually our career values is like a compass that if it's not articulated, it will just tell you, no, this is not it. This is not it. But it will not give you information where to look for it if it's not articulated in language, right? So, but once it's articulated in language, you can actually evaluate a business problem, an industry, an organization, a team, a leader, a business partner, whether they actually aligned with your values. And that could be a defining moment of whether you should be pursuing a career or a job or even a job interview or not.
You see, I think that's a great discussion point, because you and I, in the work that we do, and maybe we're not 19 anymore, unfortunately, and we've got unfortunately, exactly, we're quite experienced. So we've probably done work and been involved in various scenarios where we've talked about or discussed and debated and considered our values. But a lot of people still don't really know even what the term means. So how would you describe what your values are?
Yeah. So I can, maybe the best way to do it is just to give an example of my values.
Great.
And how it is to live life when you do work that's aligned with your values, right? So my career values are making a difference, clarity, and manifesting. So making a difference, listen, I make a difference with my students, with my prospective students. I speak, my intention in this conversation to make a difference with you, Phil, with your listeners. So that's my value. That's why I'm here, right? Clarity. It's not like I always have clarity, but I strive for clarity. And my ultimate representation of my value when I give clarity to others. So when people become clear about their values or their strengths or their motivation mechanism or their interpersonal profile, when they become clear about what the direction they want to take their life in, so that clarity is just my value. And the manifesting, I manifested a lot of amazing things in my life, but here we're talking about the career leap methodology and this education that I developed. So, but my ultimate manifestation is when my students manifest their career leaps, manifest their jobs, right? So that's the ultimate. So I can say that the work that I currently do is just 100% aligned with my values. So when I wake up in the morning or when I go to bed, and running, my own business could be very frustrating. I'm not trying to paint some rosy picture about my life, but relative to the thoughts and conversations that I had with myself when I wasn't aligned with when I was doing the work, like I don't wake up in the morning and thinking like, why I'm doing what I'm doing. Does it make any sense? Who cares if I don't do this? Like just that whole conversation completely disappeared. So you can think about the elevation of quality of life and the quality of your relationship and your participation in life if you actually do the work that is aligned with who you are.
Yeah, and of course, as you point out, really, it's a lot easier to say than do. Actually, we truly are international today. Actually, Misha, it must be something to do with your influence, because we've got Sue Denver on, who's listening to us from the Costa Blanca. So here's a test for you. Where's the Costa Blanca? Do you know?
Is it in south of Spain?
It is very good. I'm very impressed. Where are you from originally? Because I guess you're not from the US originally, yeah?
I was born and grew up in Ukraine.
Right. Okay. So therefore, you probably know a little bit more about areas outside of America compared with maybe most Americans. Is that a fair observation?
I no comment. But I used to live in Spain, so I did,
Oh my goodness me! Right. Okay. Well, there you go
and I
then.
used to live in the UK, so I did my share of traveling. So
Oh, great. Okay. So yeah. So you're very aware. You've got a passport, which is sometimes the way we perceive Americans. But of course, it's all changed a lot these days. So okay, let's keep talking about this values thing. Then, do you think Well, ask you if you're, from your personal point of view, and or other people, or through research and the work that you do you think your values changed significantly during the life journey?
yeah, they could definitely change. But I also, it's not something that changes day to day, right? But as I think we learn more about ourselves, we maybe have different responsibilities in life as we get more experience. I wouldn't even use the word change. They actually evolve. They kind of progress with development that we go through as human beings.
So I guess then on that basis, 'cause I know if I think about myself, I was in work in the past in my slightly earlier career where customer service was very much part of my world. I was doing it, and then I was managing it, and customer service was critical and massive in terms of my values, i.e., providing it. But what I find interesting about myself, and it might just be because I'm weird, I'm the first to admit it, but what I found then, as time went on, as I got more involved in sales and marketing and business development, then all of a sudden customer service didn't matter in the same way. And then my values were more about entrepreneurship and striving to achieve, and and getting through the struggles and the challenges that are created. So I certainly can relate to that scenario where your values maybe change.
Yeah. This is where I work with people, because customer service might have not been your value. It might have been the strength, something that you learn how to do really well, but it might have not. Usually, if you have a value of service, which is, I usually, when I think about values, they usually have perpetual qualities. So if service is your value, then people in your life would know you, even outside of work, that you are a person that likes to provide great service. They would feel taken care around you. So then in this case, that the service would be the value. But some things are not values. We just, maybe you were just great in customer service, that you just developed that muscle and it served you really well, but it might have not been your value. So
I think it probably wasn't with reflection. I think you've just hit the nail on the head. That's absolutely right. So if you had to, as you know, I run a channel called Passions. If you had to pinpoint, I know you've said about your values and about making a difference, but if you had to pinpoint what is your top number one passion, what would you describe it as?
Yeah. So I usually say that passion is not the language that I use, because the thing is with passions, I feel like it's something like wind. Today I wake up and I want to do this, and tomorrow I wake up and I want to do that. So I have values, I have commitments to certain things. But I kind of went away from the whole term passions personally in my life. But I love my kids, I could say with passion, and I love what I do with passion, so there is passion in my life, but that's not necessarily the measure that I use in my life.
Yeah. So let me ask you another question then, slightly reframed. See if I get through on that one. When are you most satisfied? When do you feel most satisfied with the work that you've done
Oh,
in yourself?
awesome. When somebody tells me, Misha, I finally got this thing that I've been searching for it in my life, and now I know what it is, or now I'm clear what I want to do, or now I know how to communicate, or now you know, sometimes people come to my program and when you, for instance, trying to make any major change in your life, in order to do it, you need to build what I call a board of supporters. And number one in your board of supporters, your significant others, in whatever form they are. And I usually teach my students is your job. Your job is to turn your significant other into your number one supporter. Because otherwise, how would you be able to go through career change without that support? It's probably possible, it's just much harder. So when people have breakthroughs in their relationships because suddenly they have these conversations they haven't had, that's fulfilling for me. When people, one of the things that I train my students is to become masterful in identifying and dismantling their disempowering beliefs. So when I see that my student, that's my favorite moment, when they say something and then they stop and say like, oh my God, that was a disempowering belief. And they say something very different next moment. Those are very satisfying moments for me.
And do you find that in the US, do you find that the youngsters, the college students are, I mean, I'm generalizing massively, but are really motivated to make the most of their careers? I know that's a very general question, but are they driven and motivated to make the most of their careers? And I guess almost like the second part of that question, how often is entrepreneurship promoted or introduced to them as a really serious option when they leave college?
Well, when people talk to me, and lately I've been working with high school students and college students, and I usually say, first of all, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should be an entrepreneur already. There is nothing, you don't need to help. Nowadays, with these little barriers, there is nothing stopping you from creating your business without necessarily going to college. In fact, college is ultimately not a prerequisite to becoming an entrepreneur nowadays. So, yeah, I think there is quite a bit of conversation. I recently started working with that crowd, so it's hard for me to make some broad remarks, but I know some people are interested, and but I think it's hard to answer such a big general question for me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I'm going to be working with some young people in a college from the beginning of November, and it's the first time I'll have been dealing with and working up close and personal with young people for quite some time. I used to do it a fair bit, and it's not deliberate. You just get busy with what you might call the day job. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what they've got to say and getting an understanding of what actually the term in the UK tickles their fancy.
Right.
Not necessarily a technical term, but what really
Right.
drives them, what motivates them.
Yeah.
And I'm really intrigued as part of my massive curiosity gene to
Yes.
find out what is making them tick nowadays, and maybe even in a way comparing it with what I might have heard 10 years ago.
Yeah. So I recently started working with that crowd, and I feel like I was like, oh my God, I really don't know how to talk to this audience that's not familiar to me, but it's definitely very interesting. I also think it's I think high school is just such a perfect time to be in this discovery of what is the right career and what do I want to do with my life. And I think what's important for people at that age is to understand that first, that idea that was in the past that you choose one career for life, like you go to college and study one thing, that's going away. Most likely, people will have multiple careers in their lifetime, which makes it even more important to have tools to choose them, because it's not going to be one thing. So it probably several times you'd need to make choices. And so that's number one. And then I think people have many more choices now that they had even 10, 20 years ago in terms of what they could be doing and how they could be working. And then, and I think what's important to teach high school students is not necessarily to find the answer, but how do you look for one? So they can develop these muscles to continuously explore, evaluate their choices, and they have tools to do that.
I think that's right. That makes just total sense. I think one of the issues that we have here in the UK is obviously we live in a world now, particularly in the Western world, of instant gratification. And one of the things that I come across with young entrepreneur types and young people is that they almost like have this expectation, or even I might even go as far as to say entitlement sometimes, to instant success. And in my experience, success is a journey, and sometimes you have to be patient. And I work with a lot of small businesses, and this is a difficult conversation one has to have. And I always call it, when I start working with my clients, I always call it, I've not got any magic pixie dust. So I've run out completely. And I always say that Harry Potter's used it all up. Is that something that, is similar in the US, or do you think that's just maybe the UK?
It's hard for me to make this generalization, but when I work with my students, I define what is the criteria to be an entrepreneur, so they can evaluate whether that's the right option for them, and if for some reason it might not be the right option for them, whether it's you need to have a right partner to do that. So I think resilience, and I think what you're pointing out to, like being able to develop your own self-structure, for instance, or resilience. And I think I'm going back to Churchill's quote that success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. I think these are some of the qualities that are required for you to be on this journey. So it's also not for everybody, but I think it's, listen, I want instant gratification myself, so I can't blame anybody, and I want my results immediately myself, so I can't really fault anybody in wanting that. But with experience, you learn to live that sometimes it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's not really a case of, I'm absolutely the same. I'm impatient by nature. I guess it's one of those things that, as you just said there, if you lose enthusiasm because it's not happening as fast as you thought. So, if you think that you're going to be, you've got this idea for this app, and you think that, in 3 months' time, Mark Zuckerberg is going to be tapping on the door with a big wallet full of dollars.
Yes.
It might be disappointing that probably, you never know, but probably won't happen. And then if that doesn't happen, it's then making sure that you've got that resilience, as you said, to make sure that you keep going and take the disappointment, but don't let it knock you off track, and don't let it almost like knock you off the path completely.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. Okay. So, what sort of things would you say that you'll focus on in the future? What sort of things are interesting you at the moment, or enthusing you at the moment about the future of what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm designing some digital programs right now. I'm starting to work with corporations, and actually helping them within a corporation to help people to define their careers. I am very excited about working with leaders, the people that kind of these high impact individuals that, for them as the next step probably will be a significant change and significant impact also. Listen, I'm excited about everything. It's been quite a journey. Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
And do you think leaders are born or made?
Leaders are born or made. Listen, I think there is a little bit of everything. I think you need to get to certain qualities. Some people are naturally gifted with them, and they still need to do the work, and some people need to do more work. Um, so again, I think those are complex questions that's not like a yes or no type of answers. I think it could work in different ways.
It's like many, many questions, actually, that quite often the answer is it depends.
Right.
So it absolutely depends. Right. Okay. So how can people get in touch with you then, Misha? How can people find out more about your work and what's your website address and such like?
Yeah. So if you want to learn more about me and my work, you go to misharubin.com. And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I'm ready for my leap. I can't wait anymore. I'm done with mediocrity, with what I call career mediocrity. Then you can go to thecareerleap.com and register into one of my programs.
Fantastic. And are there any books that or TED Talks or anything like that that you are a fan of that you might be able to mention or recommend to people?
Yeah, my favorite book to recommend is Michael Singer's two books, Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment. So one is about his philosophy, and another one is about his life and how he implemented life. I think it's a fascinating read. Highly recommend.
All right. Well, I make a note of those because it's always good to get recommendations. One of the books that I read that helped me change my path, 25 years ago now, was called "What Color Is My Parachute?"
Yes,
And I
yes,
think have you heard of that? And I think
yes,
I think it's on about edition number 64 now, isn't it? Because they keep
yeah.
updating it and updating it and updating it.
Hmm.
But I actually went through that process myself. I was in South Africa actually at the time. I remember, in Cape Town, and I went through that process, and it really helped me to get a flavour for what my values were and what my strengths were. And I suspect it's probably still around and quite possibly still as relevant as it's ever been.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely looked a little bit through that book. Um, so yes,
Yeah, so fantastic. Right, okay then, Misha. Well, I think with a name like Misha Rubin, a bit like Phil Crowshaw, if people want to find you, they'll find you. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So thanks for joining me today. It's really interesting. And honestly, all the very best with the work that you're doing. And thank you for your time, because I know time is precious. And thanks for
yes,
joining me today on Friday Live.
it's my pleasure.
Thanks for it, Misha. Bye-bye now.
Bye bye.
So that's Misha Rubin, and we've been talking today all about the satisfaction of work and finding meaningful work. So I guess my thought on it is that I've been looking for this and working on this for some time. 20 years ago now, I gave up my corporate position and gave up my corporate life for the simple reason that the work wasn't meaningful to me anymore, and I decided to do my own thing and go out on my own. And maybe as Misha says there, it's been a roller coaster ride, as they say, of great highs and some lows. But my God, you don't half feel alive, and at least you're controlling your own destiny, and you can't just blame that boss that we all blame if we get half a chance. So thanks very much for joining me today. Hopefully we'll be back again next Friday at 3 p.m. With another Friday Live. So thanks again, Misha.
Thank you so much. It's
We'll
been a
see
pleasure.
everybody again soon. Bye for
Okay.
now.
Okay. Bye bye.